Normality. Luangpor Teean, 1911 to 1988, was one of the most remarkable teachers of Buddhist practice to appear in Asia in modern times. His teaching issued very directly from his own experience, intensely personal and original. Not a scholar nor academic, but a simple man who spoke very frankly about his experiences. His method of meditation employs simple hand and arm movements as a way to increase awareness. If you are searching for ways to calm a busy mind, Luangpor Teean's gentle teaching will guide the way. Luangpor Teean Jita Subho. Forward. The way Luangpor Teean teaches differs somewhat from other teachings because he speaks directly from his experiences. Luangpor Teean couldn't read or write, nor speak Central Thai, only the Lao dialect, until 12 or 13 years before he died. Because of this lack of academic knowledge, his words don't always correspond to the accepted interpretations of those words. One who is attached to conservative explanations will find this unacceptable, but someone with an open mind, concerned about what is behind the words, can step over rigid views about what things mean. For example, the four chanas are explained in terms of the four stages of enlightenment, and seeing the Tathagata, as seeing oneself. Some of these points could be seen as ready-wit, Pali, Patipanna, and at the same time, their meaning recognized. Other things need a mature attitude of not fussing about definitions, but sincerely opening up to what Luangpor is trying to convey. It is unlikely that it will escape the reader's attention that Luangpor Teean was a simple man, who spoke very frankly about his experiences, and the reason he did so seems rather obvious. With confidence one is liable to open up the mind more and come closer to what Luangpor is pointing to. To have an open mind is exactly what awareness is about, to receive anything that appears or occurs in the present, whether it is a sensation due to movements, breathing, the eyes blinking, the knee resting on the floor, a breeze touching the skin, or even sound and visual phenomena. We hear and see them in the present, don't we? As long as the mind doesn't proliferate, all of this can be used as more objects of awareness. They are not obstacles. That's a different attitude than training in concentration, where the mind is narrowed down to one point. But samadhi is the establishing of the mind, and we can establish the mind in awareness every second of the day because movements, as well as this practice, are natural. The translator. Walking the path. Taking a shortcut. Today the monks, novices, and lay people are meeting here in order to study the method to develop meditation. We're not interested in anything else because we've done it already. For example, making merit, being generous, upholding precepts and doing tranquility, meditation. As for insight meditation, we've heard about it, but we don't yet understand, or we've only practiced it a little bit. Therefore, before we start practicing insight meditation, we have to rely on listening and reading from scriptures before we understand what tranquility meditation is and what insight meditation is. Developing awareness is the path that the Buddha teaches. Things outside of Buddhism. Making merit, being generous, keeping precepts and doing tranquility meditation are a pair with the world. Whether there is a Buddha or there is no Buddha, these things exist anyway. When Prince Siddhartha was born, Brahmins were assiduously looked after, which is making merit and offerings. As for tranquility meditation, it's a matter of psychic powers, a matter of ambition. We've probably heard about becoming invisible, flying through the air, diving into the earth, reading other people's minds, multiplying oneself, reciting magical verses to obstruct vision, and hearing by entering absorption. This is not insight. According to the Buddha's biography, when Prince Siddhartha ordained, he studied with the hermit Alara, and mastered 7 absorptions, 4 form absorptions and 3 formless absorptions. But suffering still existed. That is to say, there was still greed, hatred, and delusion. He was not satisfied with this and so studied with the last teacher, the hermit Utthaga, until he mastered the 8 absorptions, 4 form absorptions and 4 formless absorptions. The hermit said, "That's as much as I know." But the prince was still not satisfied because there was still greed, hatred, and delusion. He wasn't liberated from suffering yet. This shows that tranquility is not able to put an end to suffering. After this, the prince tormented himself, together with the 5 ascetics who were following him. He fasted until his body was so thin that it was just skin over his bones, and he held his breath. But even after doing all this, greed, hatred, delusion, satisfaction and dissatisfaction still persisted. There were still defilements. Things inside Buddhism. So the prince gave up those methods and started to eat fruit. Because of this, the 5 disciples avoided and eventually left him, so he practiced by himself. Having eaten some rice offered by Miss Suchata, his body recovered strength. He reflected on the various methods that he had been practicing but which were not capable of shaking off the defilements. He still had troubles and suffering. So the prince turned around and looked at his mind and was, at last, successful. He attained Anuttara Sammasambodhiyana and became the fully enlightened Buddha. He was able to conquer all the defilements and to extinguish suffering, leaving only coolness. His body was back to normal and his mind was free of suffering at last. He lived with and enjoyed the happiness of awareness and wisdom. Having attained this, the Buddha shrank back from teaching, reflecting that this practice was profound, and it would be hard to understand. So it can be taken that mind development is something difficult to do, and that this is what Buddhist teaching is about. As for making merit, being generous, keeping precepts, and doing tranquility meditation, it is not the teaching of the Buddha, but a teaching of teachers at large. Teachings outside of Buddhism. There were many sects in India. Some sects taught to lie roasting on fire so that defilements would dry up, some taught to lie on thorns to endure through the pain and torment that resulted from that, in order to get rid of defilements. Some sects ought to give up everything including clothes, a practice known as naked asceticism, so as to induce the feeling that there is no self, no shame. It was believed that defilements would be dissolved that way. Altogether, there were many sects, but none of them could eliminate the defilements. This matter can easily be proven, as it is said that lying roasting on fire and drinking hot water will result in the heat burning off the defilements. In the old days, in the villages, when a woman gave birth, she would be laid down roasting above a fire and given hot water to drink. But the woman would still have defilements, showing that this sect did not achieve results. As for the sect that would have its followers give up everything and go naked, just look at a baby not wearing clothes. It still has moods and feelings. As soon as someone talks nicely, it laughs. And when someone scolds, it cries, whether naked or clothed. This shows that defilements are not in the body, they are in the mind. Therefore, to practice Dhamma we have to practice at the mind. I will tell you so you'll understand, because I have been doing this, repeating a mantra such as Bhud, though, Sammat Arahant, rising falling, counting, 1, 2, 3 with these methods, one has to sit with the eyes closed and repeat a word while watching the breath, for example, saying Bhud, with the in-breath, and though, with the out-breath. I've done quite a lot of this, but there was still satisfaction and dissatisfaction, greed, hatred, and delusion didn't diminish. This kind of practice is called tranquility meditation. Tranquility meditation is not more than a means to make the mind peaceful, but it is peace under the influence of delusion. It's just like putting a rock on top of grass. As long as the rock is on top of the grass can't grow, but when the rock is removed, the grass grows just as before, or maybe even more vigorously than before. It is true that there is no lopa, dosa, and moha when we're sitting alone, with the eyes closed, but as soon as we go back into society, like and dislike are born again. This is how it is. Going off to stay in a cave in a forest or the mountains cannot extinguish suffering, just because of going to stay there. At first, I did it like that also. The teachings inside Buddhism. The word Vipassana translates as realizing and truly seeing. Seeing what? Seeing impermanence, instability, and non-selfhood. When having insight, one views things differently than before. It is a transcendency. When we don't yet see clearly nor truly know, then acting, speaking, and thinking are as before. It is not yet Vipassana. But when we feel differently than before, that is, greed, hatred and delusion decrease, it can be called Vipassana. A handful of leaves, awareness. To practice insight meditation, the Buddha teaches us to develop 4 foundations of awareness, namely 1. Gayanupasanasatipatthana, that is, to meditate on the body, in the body, and see according to actuality, that this body is only just a body, it's not a being, an individual, nor a self. It is neither me nor it. 2. Vedananupasanasatipatthana, to meditate on the feelings, and see according to actuality, that these feelings are only just feelings, they are not a being, an individual, nor a self. They are neither me nor them. 3. Jittanupasanasatipatthana, to meditate on the mind, in the mind, and see according to actuality, that this mind is only just mind, it is not a being, an individual, nor a self. It is neither me nor it. 4. Dhammanupasanasatipatthana, to meditate on the mental objects, in the mental objects, and see according to actuality, that these mental objects are only just mental objects. They are not a being, an individual, nor a self. They are neither me nor them. The teachings of the Buddha are many, I'm not able to describe all of it. We've probably heard that at one time our Buddha was walking with a number of monks in the forest. Seeing fallen leaves scattered around, the Buddha picked up a handful of leaves and asked those bhikkhus, monks, which is more, the leaves in my hand or all the leaves in the forest? The bhikkhus answered, the leaves in the forest are more than those in your hand, so much so that they cannot be compared. The Buddha then taught that the knowledge and understanding that the Buddha had studied was comparable to the leaves in the forest, and the knowledge that he taught us was comparable to a handful of leaves. The leaves in the forest stand for making merit, generosity, keeping precepts, and developing tranquility meditation, and the handful of leaves for insight meditation. However, to do Vipassana we have to study through listening and reading at first, before we start practicing. Otherwise we'll waste a lot of time gathering all the leaves in the forest. The practice of Vipassana that the Buddha teaches, though developing the 4 Satipatthana, means learning to be aware. The Buddha said that there are 2 things that are of great assistance, namely, first, sati, to recollect or not forget that there is the body, that there are movements, that there are feelings, that there is mind or that there are mental objects. Before doing or thinking anything, know it with awareness. And second, sampajanya, to realize, the moment we're thinking something, to realize it fully. Sati sampajanya, when using ordinary language, just means to wake up, to awaken, to feel oneself all the time. Developing awareness gives rise to wisdom. Talking from experience, it is not necessary to sit with the eyes closed in order to develop awareness. I've done the method of sitting with closed eyes, and wisdom didn't arise. But doing the new method, my method, wisdom did arise, and I got the feeling that is in accordance with the texts. Some people may think that my method is new because they've never heard it before, but actually it is as old as the Buddhist teachings. A. Arouse the body to always feel and be awake. The development of awareness that I'm talking about and have been doing is done as follows. We can either sit down on the floor or on a chair, and it can even be done in the lying or standing position. Catch with your awareness the movements of the hands, Turn the hand up, turn the hand down, raise the hand, lower the hand. Be aware of each posture. Do this often. This is the coarse way of developing awareness. Simply speaking, walking, or lying down, or whatever you may be doing, know it. Everyone can do this method, no matter what religion one believed in. It can be practiced by all. People of all nationalities can do it because everyone has a body and mind. All religions teach the same thing, to abandon what is bad and to do what is good. B. Arouse the mind to always feel and be awake. Having developed awareness until one is skilled at it, catch the feelings in the mind with awareness, following whatever comes up, no matter what one is thinking. Know and see it. Keep watching your own thoughts continuously. Regardless of what you're doing, look at your own mind all the time, no matter what it is that you are doing, reading a book, writing, digging, cutting grass or bathing. Keep watch over your own mind all the time. What kinds of feelings are coming up? Satisfaction, dissatisfaction, worry, doubts, etc. These things are all thoughts, objects. Watch over these thoughts and objects. Then we will see the various kinds of thoughts, such as gladness, sadness, desire to get, desire to not get, anger, hate, and so forth. They don't exist all the time. They arise and pass away, they change all the time. We are not glad or sad for 24 hours. See, to know and see according to reality. Change, arising passing away, is what the Buddha showed to be impermanence, instability and non-selfhood. So don't follow moods. The Buddha proclaimed that he was enlightened by working with the mind. We have to look at our minds. Watching the mind is turning on the light by using the switch. When we do this often, awareness will become nimble and quick, awareness will intercept greed, hatred, and delusion and prevent it from arising. Awareness and concentration are together. As for wisdom, it means knowing and seeing clearly. In Pali, it says Nati Panyasama, meaning there is nothing as bright as wisdom. And Sathi they sung Navaranung, meaning awareness is that which prevents the stream of defilements. There isn't anything that is fast enough to hold back the stream, other than Sathi. It is this awareness and wisdom, that come and contact, know, see, and stop it, not letting us become deluded. This is because Sathi, Samadhi, Panya, is opposite to dosa, moha, lopa. If we don't see, know, and understand, there is full greed, hatred, and delusion. It is comparable to nighttime, when it's dark. As soon as we light a candle there is light and the darkness disappears, because darkness is afraid of light. As soon as the candle goes out, the darkness immediately comes back. D. Peace as result. That I'm giving some reflections and explaining, this shortcut method of practice is in order for you all to take it, and practice with it, so that you get quick results and don't have to waste time. This method can be used in daily life, there is no need to stop working in order to practice. Some people have practiced a bit already, and some people have only just heard it. Some people who have never heard it might feel displeased. If that's how you feel, then discard that feeling first, the knowledge that you have learned before. Put it down for now and test out what I'm saying, try it out and you will know what the results that arise are like. I dare to guarantee that, this method is at least 80% right according to what the Buddha teaches. Talking according to just my own personal feeling, it is 100% right, because having practiced it, I know that it alleviates greed, hatred, and delusion. When those things diminish, peace arises instead. E. Full awareness as result. I'd like to give another example. Take a glass. We can see that there is air in the glass. When we pour water into it, the air goes out and the water is in it instead. Then, when we pour the water out, the air goes back in and replaces the water. This compares with our turning up the hand. We know, we have awareness, Sathi comes to replace not knowing, delusion. Not knowing goes out of our minds. Do it often. Catch the feeling often, in all postures. Sati will increase, and delusion, not knowing, will decrease just as the water replaces air in the glass. Maybe some of you have heard about, or have been taught, to make merit, for example by building a ceremonial hall or temple, and you get merit for this or that many eons. And you've probably heard that, 100 years on earth equals one year in heaven. The angels throw one sesame seed in a pit that is 100 leagues deep. When it is full, that's 1 eon. Other than that, you've probably heard that to once put food into a monk's bowl, you get rewarded for 6 eons, sending a container with food to offer to monks, one gets rewarded for 5 eons, to send food for the midday meal, 5 eons. These things are puzzles, but some people don't understand. If you want to understand, you have to practice, to develop awareness, by turning the hand up and down, feeling it. Before, we would do things without sati, not feeling anything at all. It's comparable to an abyss or pit that is empty, nothing in it, just like in that puzzle. But when training in awareness, catching the movement in all postures, for example, blinking the eyes, sitting and lying down, we are aware, feeling it, knowing it. When doing this, sati increases, just like the sesame seeds that fall in the pit, or abyss that is 100 leagues wide, and 100 leagues deep. The aim of this comparison is that we train a lot in awareness, and that we do it a lot in order to get results, to make sati full, so that we are not negligent or deluded. When we have developed the 4 foundations of awareness, as described earlier, we will have the ability to really contemplate, ponder, and understand the various problems in our minds. Developing awareness in the right way will yield results within 3 years. It says in the scriptures that whoever develops the 4 satipatthana in the right way, and as continuous as links in a chain, will receive one of the following 2 results, at most, within 7 years, medium within months, or as fast as 1 to 15 days to become, 1, an arahant, or 2, an anagama, i.e., one who is nearly fully enlightened, in this very life. As for the way of developing the awareness that I'm talking about, if you really do it, knowledge and understanding will arise, and suffering will diminish, within at most 3 years, medium within 1 year, or as fast as 1 to 90 days. We will know, see, and understand, and our life from then onwards will have happiness and no suffering. To practice like this, we don't have to spend money, we can do it an hour a day, or 5 minutes. Even hearing about it often makes the defilements gradually diminish. Greed, hatred, and delusion are evil, they are suffering. To get angry once is evil and is suffering one time. Evil and darkness are the same. Darkness means not seeing, not knowing, not understanding. Merit and knowledge are the same. When we understand, we are at ease, we don't have suffering and we don't doubt. If the mind is dark, there is suffering and doubt. For example, doubt that we're going to be reborn like this and like that after death. But some people, including myself, who have made merit, been generous, kept precepts and practiced tranquility meditation, still doubt about merit and demerit, about falling into hell or going up to heaven after death. They don't understand at that time. The Buddha teaches that heaven is in the heart, hell is in the mind, and Nibbana also is in the mind. Our grandparents used to tell us this, but we didn't reflect on it, so we didn't understand it. We have to practice and know for ourselves. Studying from scriptures is good, but it cannot solve suffering. Teachers teach that we should let go of greed, hatred, and delusion, but they themselves can't let go of it. Teaching others is easy, but teaching oneself is hard. But this method of mine is not difficult. You don't have to study or learn anything. Being able to read and write or not is of no importance. Everyone can practice, men as well as women, ordained or not ordained. We can all practice. There is only one Dhamma, not many kinds. To say that the Dhamma of a person who keeps 5 precepts is one thing, that the Dhamma of a person who keeps 8 precepts is another thing, the Dhamma of an ordained person is another thing, the Dhamma of a lay person is another thing, the Dhamma of a person who practices insight meditation yet another thing. That is a different matter. That is not what I'm talking about. I say that there is only one Dhamma. Dhamma is to finish lopa, dosa, and moha. Doing this is what virtue and Dhamma are. It says in the scriptures that virtue is the means to eliminate coarse defilements, concentration is the means to eliminate medium defilements, and wisdom is the means to eliminate subtle defilements. But can we really eliminate them? No. Why not? Because we don't do it properly. The word defilement stands for greed, hatred, and delusion, but most of us understand it only as materialistic, that having money, a big house and a smart car is defilement. But in reality, those things are not defilements. They are just things that come from being diligent and knowing how to work, and from knowing how to save and accumulate things. But the defilements that I'm talking about are greed, hatred, delusion, and sorrow. These defilements are not afraid of anyone, not of rich people, not of influential people, not even of monks ordained for a long time, with a title, are they afraid? They enter into everyone's mind. On speaking in another way, we could say that the defilements slap everyone's face. A wealthy person, on being told off a bit, is displeased. This shows that the defilements slap him or her in the face. Or when someone praises him or her, satisfaction arises. This is the defilements slapping his or her face. These defilements are not afraid of anyone at all. They are only afraid of those who are disciples of the Buddha, they are afraid of those who develop the four foundations of awareness in the right way, they are ashamed, they don't dare to come close, because that person has the eye to see the Dhamma, the wisdom to see clearly. Of the lay people who have come here today, some people are still young, only 20 to 30 years old. If you develop awareness in the right way, within 2 or 3 years you will go beyond suffering, and during the remaining part of your life, you will just have happiness. Even older people 50 or 60 years old, are the same. Until you die your life will only have happiness. And when you die without suffering. If you still have another 9 or 10 years to live, it will be 9 or 10 years without suffering, with only happiness and coolness of mind. This is the heartwood, the essence of Buddhism. The word Buddha means the one who knows, the awakened one who is joyful with Dhamma. I have shared some of my reflections and understanding. It is a shortcut to practicing Vipassana. It is instantaneous. Having listened, please practice with every breath, no matter where you are, whatever work you are engaged in. You can practice while washing clothes, doing the dishes, sweeping up, or working in the field. Vipassana is wisdom, it is life, it is virtue, it is the Dhamma, it is everything. It is the real life, it is the real Dhamma. May you understand it like this. Summary of the shortcut. I'll give you a few small reflections. 1. To be diligent in developing awareness in all postures, turn the hand up, turn the hand down, raise the hand, lower the hand, walk back and forth, lean to the right and the left, blink the eyes, open the mouth, swallow saliva, breath in and out, fully feeling yourself doing it. This is called having sati. It is equal to throwing sesame seeds into the abyss. When awareness is complete, wisdom arises to really know and see the following matters: rupa, nama, rupa doing, nama doing, rupa disease, nama disease, knowing instability, impermanence and non-selfhood, knowing convention, knowing religion, knowing Buddhism, knowing evil, knowing merit. Really knowing. These are objects to know with real awareness and wisdom. 2. Next, to work with the mind, look at the mind with awareness. Whatever the mind thinks, immediately know it and conquer it. When we immediately know and conquer thought, this is called working with the mind. 3. Do it until you are nimble and swift, until greed, hatred and delusion stop arising. It is the calming and extinguishing of suffering in the mind. This type of suffering we can't chase away as we would chase off a pig, a dog, a duck, or a chicken. We must depend on the development of awareness, and see our minds in order to deal with these types of defilements. If we don't see our minds, we will be empty, similar to a pit or abyss that is never full. When we have awareness, it means it is full, it is no longer a pit or an abyss, and lopa, dosa, and moha don't have a place to enter, because awareness is full. Whatever work we do it with sathipanya. There is no delusion, only rightness. These types of defilements are ugly and worthy of getting fed up with. Whoever is a disciple of the Buddha with an eye to see the Dhamma, will not have them lying around in his or her mind. They are afraid. Suppose we have defilements at a level of 100%. They slap our face 100%. When we see and understand them, they will gradually diminish. Then, when we try to become familiar with looking at our minds, the defilements will diminish increasingly, step by step. When it reaches 100%, we're rid of suffering. What is left is 100% happiness. Therefore, may you all try to practice and reach the real peace and happiness. The path of peace. May you all listen well, this time, so that sathipanya springs up. Knowing suffering. Something we have in common is that we don't want suffering, we hate it. Then how does suffering arise? Suffering arises because we don't know. Suffering doesn't exist within us, and it doesn't arise all the time. What really exists for sure is normality. By nature, the mind of each person is in a state of normality. As we're working, if we do it with delusion, it is called suffering. Most people have suffering while working because they don't see suffering. People who go and see movies and shows do so because suffering leads them. This is due to our not watching minds. The moment we want to go and watch a movie, a thought flashes up that we want to watch a movie. We're not thinking it all day long. When the thought comes up, we don't see the thought. We only just know the thought, and we act, following the thought. This is called suffering. People who smoke are the same. Sometimes they don't even think to smoke but simply follow their moods. They take a cigarette to smoke because they think it is happiness, but actually it is suffering that compels them to do it. Suffering stinks. As to this word suffering, the Buddha sometimes calls it suffering, sometimes defilement, sometimes stench. When talking about suffering or defilements, one notes that it has an ugly smell to it, according to Buddhism. Suffering is something dirty and it stinks, nobody wants it. As soon as the body dies, it starts to rot and stink. But we can still wash and clean it. Excrement is something that stinks, and we detest it. Nobody wants to touch or grab hold of it. But even with such stinking things, the Buddha said, they don't stink all that much, they can still be touched and washed. But the stinking things to which the Buddha is referring are really stinky. They are greed, hatred, and delusion, concealed in our minds, ready to bubble up. The Buddha condemns this emphatically. If anyone's mind still has greed, hatred, and delusion, the Buddha says that it stinks more than excrement. As soon as the mind thinks something in a flash, a person who doesn't know, doesn't see, and doesn't understand becomes deluded immediately. This arising is called by the Buddha, a stain. The word stain means delusion. Even though we've never known, seen, or watched our minds, we still say that we see. But in reality it is not seeing, it is only just knowing thought, and then we act according to the thought. When we say to see, it should mean that we see defilements. That is, we see that either there is greed, hatred, or delusion mixed up in thought, or there is not. To see like this, we have to practice Dhamma first. Practicing Dhamma. Vipassana. In practicing Dhamma, even though one may practice various methods for a long time, if one doesn't perceive that point where the mind is manifesting, one still doesn't understand. One still doesn't understand the main principle of practice according to the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha said that he was enlightened because he worked with the mind, practiced with the mind. but most of us just make merit and give offerings in order to chase off suffering. We haven't yet practiced by following the Buddha style. The Buddha once taught that the results of making merit 100 or 1,000 times are less than is gained by keeping the precepts even once. The results of keeping precepts 100 or 1,000 times are less than making the mind peaceful through practicing tranquility meditation once, and the results of making the mind peaceful through practicing tranquility meditation 100 or 1,000 times are less than practicing insight meditation once. What does insight mean? Insight means to clearly and truly see in a way that is different from one's original way of seeing. Different because the original way of seeing is a state that doesn't know, see, and understand clearly. Briefly stated, the mind is muddled up. Doing Vipassana means to be aware. Being aware is very fruitful. The Buddha practiced Dhamma through being aware, and so became enlightened. Peace. Most of us understand that in order to be an arahant, we have to do tranquility meditation and make the mind peaceful. In reality, there are two kinds of peace, namely, peace that is like being inside a cave, and peace that is like being outside a cave. Peace inside a cave means it is just as though we're in a cave or we're in a dark room. When we light a fire, the darkness disappears and light come to take its place, but as soon as the fire goes out, the darkness come back again. Even when we've made a fire and there's light, we're still in the cave and we still can't see the shape of the cave. We only just see certain things inside the cave. Peace inside a cave is therefore called peace under the influence of moha, a not knowing kind of peace, or even a not wanting to know kind of peace. That some people go and sit to make their minds peaceful, understanding that they're developing insight, this is so, but it's a diluted kind of truth. As for peace outside a cave, it's just like being outside a cave, but it's not dark. There's no need to make a fire, and we're able to know and see what the shape of the cave is like. This may be likened to peace that is without delusion, i.e., peace due to the absence of defilements. There is no lopa, dosa, or moha. In order to achieve this kind of peace, we have to realize and truly see first. Seeing truly and clearly is called insight. Insight is to realize and truly see according to reality. Peace outside the cave is therefore called a knowing kind of peace. One is peaceful because one knows. I want to shake up and warn all of you that developing insight has many obstacles. If we don't know, we'll go wrong, but when we see, know, and understand, we can solve the problems. The first obstacle. The first obstacle in developing Vipassana can appear when we make movements with the body, and sati is aware of it. Wisdom arises in the mind that knows reality as it really is. That is, it knows rupa, nama, it knows instability, impermanence and non-selfhood, it knows convention, it knows religion, knows Buddhism, knows evil and knows merit. This is wisdom knowing through Vipassana. But it's only just the outer bark of Vipassana, still not able to deal with suffering. It is just knowing in knowing, it is knowing through thought, knowing the scriptures. It is defilement due to Vipassana. The obstacle is that when this kind of knowledge arises, we get buried in it, a kind of knowledge that is still similar to being inside a cave. Therefore, next we must try and find a method to get out of the cave, to pull ourselves out of that knowledge, gradually, by watching our thoughts. As soon as a thought flashes up, know, see, and understand that it has come up. This is practicing Dhamma a little bit deeper. Ordinarily, a tree has an outer bark. When one removes the outer bark, he reaches the layer with the nourishing sap inside. Removing that layer, one reaches the white wood. Removing that, one comes to the hard wood. Buddhism is the same. Knowing rupanama, evil and merit is also knowledge, but it is outer knowledge, enough to deal with suffering on one level, such as not being foolish by believing in auspicious things and lucky omens, or in ghosts and angels. But when one is in such a state, greed, hatred, and delusion are still there, because one doesn't know the origin or source of it. To solve this problem, to know the origin of the arising of greed, hatred, and delusion, We must watch our minds, like a cat that waits for a chance to grab a mouse. As soon as a thought comes up in the mind, look at it and fix on it so that it is known in time. A thought comes. Whack, cut it off straight away. Another one, whack, cut it off right there. Do this often. Thoughts will thereby decrease and awareness will increase. Just as with the positive and the negative. When there is more of the positive, the negative lessens. We start off never having seen thought, thinking 100 things and never seeing a single thought. But when we are watching like this, we catch it once and cut it off. The remaining thoughts are less than 100 now and will steadily decrease step by step, as long as we keep at it. We keep gazing like this, a thought comes, we cut it off, another one arises, we drop it. When we think 100 thoughts and we know 95 of them, it shows that we have a lot of awareness. Just 5 thoughts left that we can't keep up with. Right here is where we have to put forth effort, watch thought but don't be caught up in the thought. When we know and see all the 100 thoughts, keep up with every thought every time, it is equal to knowing and seeing exactly where greed, hatred, and delusion are born. We have to throw them off so that defilements are unable to arise. This is called to keep abreast by knowing, to know in time. Knowing how to prevent, knowing how to solve. This is where we're able to deal with lopa, dosa, and moha. Defilements can arise because we get deluded right here. We don't know that their origin is right here. This refers even to someone who goes to the monastery to listen to talks, who makes offerings, who keeps precepts and develops both tranquility and insight meditation. If that person has still never seen his or her own thoughts, then that person is still far from the truth taught by the Buddha. Contrariwise, even if a person has never gone to a monastery to listen to the Dhamma, has never made offerings or kept precepts, but is always aware of what his or her mind is thinking, that person equals with knowing. He keeps abreast of thoughts, knows how to prevent, knows how to solve and knows how to conquer every time. That person is close to the truth, the Dhamma taught by the Buddha. Have you ever heard of the Buddha having taught that the Dhamma exists already? But there is nobody with discernment who can dig it up and find it, so it stays undiscovered. Because it is undiscovered, people make merit, give offerings, keep precepts, and do samatha meditation in order to develop good habits. So we believe that it is meritorious and wholesome to accumulate those things for the next life or for the future. This is wrong understanding. The Buddha didn't teach like this. The Buddha taught us to see our own minds. We have heard the story of the monk Wakali, who was attached to the Buddha's body and never looked at his own mind. When he was corrected by the Buddha, he became so upset that he was going to jump from a cliff and die. The Buddha stopped him and taught him that it is difficult to get born as a human being. And it's very rare for a human being to have an opportunity to listen to the Dhamma from a noble person. The Buddha said further that his body was just material. After his death it would rot and stink. That is not the Buddha. The real Buddha can be found within the monk Wakali. It is the Dhamma that is present in all people, that is, cleanliness, brightness and peace, which is the Buddha. The Buddha proclaimed, "Whoever sees the Dhamma, sees me. Whoever doesn't see the Dhamma, doesn't see me, even when taking hold of my robe or my finger." The monk Wakali woke up and started to work with the mind, and he saw his own thinking. Seeing the Dhamma. I would like to remind you once more that the word Dhamma refers to our seeing, our own minds at the moment that we are acting, talking or thinking. This is what is called seeing the Dhamma. I dare to insist that the very life of the Dhamma exists in all people without exception, no matter whether you are a man or a woman, a monk or a novice, no matter what nationality you may have, whatever language you may speak of, whatever clothes you may wear. It's all the same. The Dhamma is the actions of body, speech, and mind. Actions of the body other people can see, actions of speech others can hear, but actions of the mind others are not able to see. You can only see them yourself. For this reason, the monk Wakali felt at ease viewing it like this. Whether he saw the body of the Buddha or not, he would feel at ease because he saw the real Buddha, that is, really seeing according to reality, an ability that exists in everyone. The Buddha once described seeing in this way, with flowers, black, red, white, or whatever color, they are all ready to bloom when touched by sunshine. That I'm giving you these reflections right now is the same. Anyone can apply them in daily life, whether man or woman, whatever clothes he or she may be wearing, whatever religion is upheld. It can be used by everyone in the same way, because we all have a body and mind. When one sees one's own mind at the moment that it thinks, this indicates that one sees one's own mind at the origin or source of thought. The Buddha points to thought, which must be watched with awareness, as one must not get caught up in the thoughts. Whoever sees this, he or she is called by the Buddha a flower that is ready to bloom when the sun shines. The word sunshine refers to the teachings of the Buddha that direct us to practice with the mind. Whatever work you do, control your thoughts with awareness. Some people don't do it yet, because they're not interested. But when we are interested, when we are suffering, we must be ready to do it. There are 84,000 teachings in Buddhism. They are not for reciting and for performing ceremonies. That was not the Buddha's intention. The Buddha's teachings have nothing at all to do with superstition. They are to be practiced only in order to solve the suffering of the mind. Some people might agree that without ceremonies and rituals Buddhism can't extinguish suffering. This fails to understand the meaning in the right way. We've heard that in the time of the Buddha, when he would expound the Dhamma to people, there were many people, who would open the eye to see the Dhamma and enter the stream of Nibbana, from the first stage of enlightenment upwards by the time the discourse was finished. They didn't have to perform rites and rituals other than working with the mind, as the Buddha indicated. Wherever we explain the Dhamma, if we don't make this point, our words are a stain. Why are they a stain? They are a stain because we don't indicate the way that people who are interested in the Dhamma must practice, in order to free oneself from suffering and defilements. And they are a stain because we thereby abandon these effective teachings. Therefore, may you all try to understand this point without fail. If we don't practice according to this important teaching, then we fail to understand the teaching of the Buddha. The second obstacle. The second obstacle in developing insight is that when we begin to understand and see this point, we are able to destroy greed, hatred, and delusion to some extent, but at the same time, joy is lying concealed within it. The Buddha says this is still not right. Joy is darkness, but it is white darkness. Joy is due to our satisfaction and pride that we can do it. White darkness is frightening because it is hard to see. Black darkness is easy to see because it is dark. Being caught up in joy is to see wrong as right, because as soon as we can destroy some defilements, we don't watch at the point where the defilements are destroyed, but we get sucked into the point where joy arises. Therefore joy is an obstacle in attaining higher stages to Nibbana. Being caught up in joy is equal to being caught up in thinking. A thought comes up and we get caught up in the thought, so we don't see the thought. When we get caught up in joy, we don't see joy, and we're just content with joy. Because of this, the Buddha teaches us to pull ourselves out of the thought that we're thinking, to stand outside of it. Then we will see our thoughts. People who still don't know and see their thoughts say just the same, that they know thought. But in reality they don't understand that thoughts come up continuously, and they get caught up in them. Those who have joy or are attached to the peace of tranquility meditation are the same. They are caught up in peacefulness, don't know that peace is delusion, and thus get caught up in peace. It is comparable to someone who doesn't know how to turn on the light. He or she turns the light bulb. No light appears. The person who pulls him or herself out of thought, and knows and sees thoughts, may be compared to someone who knows how to turn on the light. That person turns on the switch and light does appear. So we have to know the origin of thought and come to an understanding with these little thoughts of ours. Then we will have as much ability as an electric light in brightening the interior of the mind, just as one correctly turns on the light with the switch. When we're looking at our minds, there is no greed, hatred, and delusion. But the moment that we're not looking and lose awareness, greed, hatred, and delusion can come back, and we can get caught up in them. It's just like a car driving along the road. At the place where the car passes there is a wind blowing behind it, leaves and dust flap and flutter at the back of the car. Thoughts of greed, hatred, and delusion flash up for a moment, and we follow them. How can we still say that we know thought? In reality we don't see thought, but we get caught up in it. The Buddha teaches that whoever doesn't see one's own thoughts is a heedless person. Heedlessness is poison to one's life, it's like being dead. This is what I said, it stinks. The Buddha said that there is nothing that stinks as much as the mind that has greed, hatred, and delusion, the mind that is stained, the dirty mind. Our real mind isn't dirty or stained at all. It's like a light bulb. The filament in the bulb is not dirty, but dust can settle on the outside of the bulb, the inside is still as bright as before. Or we could compare it with the sun. When clouds obscure the light from coming to the earth, it gets dark, but the sun is still as bright as before. Vidchat, avidchat. People who don't see thought and get caught up in thought are called people in the cycle of dependent origination, they are people who don't know. We've probably heard this, avidchat is the condition for formation to arise, formations are the condition for the birth of consciousness, consciousness conditions mentality materiality, mentality materiality conditions the six senses, the six senses condition contact, contact conditions feeling, feeling conditions craving, craving conditions clinging, clinging conditions being, being conditions birth, and birth conditions old age, death, and suffering. It's a cycle. Avidchat translates as not knowing, we say that we know, but we don't see our minds. Instead we get caught up in thought. As for the word vidchat, it means knowing, seeing one's own thoughts. A thought comes up, we see it, and it stops. It's like a cat and a mouse. If we don't have a cat at home, the mice are not afraid, but when we have a cat, it will catch the mice as soon as they show their faces. The mice die of shock when they get caught. They can die even though the cat doesn't bite. They have such shock, never been caught by a cat before. This is similar to our fixing on thoughts in our minds. When a thought comes, we know it in time, and it immediately stops, comes to a halt, can't concoct any further. This is called vidchat, knowing, to know in time, knowing how to prevent, knowing how to solve and knowing how to conquer, just like a cat and a mouse. If we don't reflect on the teachings of the Buddha, we don't understand them, and we argue and debate about the teachings, competing with each other. This is not right. Someone who has studied the teaching, and employs that knowledge as a tool for killing defilement, or dealing with suffering is doing it right, according to the Buddha's intention. These days, we study the Buddhist scriptures until we have degrees, up to the 9th level. Some may look at their own thoughts, but some never watch their minds at all. Whoever has studied but never seen his or her own thoughts, says the Buddha, are like a termite that makes holes and eats books. With academic studies it's the same, studying until one has university degrees, but still never watching one's mind. Such persons know about other people but don't know and see themselves. These people are not considered wise in Buddhism because their knowledge is only of use in an academic way, but is not useful spiritually. When we have a university degree we should deal with our minds also, that is, eliminate defilements, the coarse ones as well as the medium and subtle ones. Going against the stream of thought. We've all probably heard that the Buddha at one time practiced by tormenting himself, but saw that that method was wrong and stopped it. After that, he partook of food offered by a lady named Suchata. The Buddha asked her, "Do you offer just the food or is the tray included as well?" She answered that all was offered. Having finished the meal, the Buddha took the tray to the bank of the river and made the following resolution: if he would be enlightened, may the tray placed on the water flow against the current. This is not a true story, it's an illustration and has meaning on the level of the mind. The tray is the mind, the water represents the defilements, and the Buddha working with the mind is the action of going against the stream. The Buddha didn't let his mind follow the defilements. The current of the water is the current of thought. Following defilements is easy, everyone is doing it already, and so we have suffering. The Buddha practiced going against the stream of defilements for the extinguishing of suffering by watching the mind, seeing his own mind thinking. As soon as a thought would come up and there was desire to follow what the eye saw, the ear heard, the nose smelled, the tongue tasted, or the body felt, the Buddha saw those thoughts as defilements. He practiced going against the current of thought, not following the thoughts, which want things. Practicing like this, knowledge arose in him and he was enlightened. The thing that the Buddha points out to us to practice is to know thought with awareness, looking at our own minds. Whatever thought comes up, we should know and understand it, so that the thought does not proliferate further. When thought flashes up, we watch it with awareness, and the thought stops by itself. In practicing Dhamma, the thing to be careful about is the knowledge that knows things outside of ourselves. This kind of knowledge is defilement due to Vipassana. When we have such knowledge, it gives rise to gladness and joy. Joy is called white darkness. It is wrong knowing. Don't get attached to joy. Continuing the practice to the end, until we clearly see our thoughts, their origin, and their source, we come at last to the state of arising, passing. It is a break-off, a final exhaustion. I've compared it many times with a rope, tightly tied on both sides and being cut in the middle with a knife. The rope breaks, one cannot pull it together again, that is, one can't use it anymore. The 12 senses are similar, on seeing a form with the eye, on hearing a sound with the ear, etc., let there only just be seeing and hearing and so on. Don't concoct it into beautiful or ugly, good or bad, pleasing or displeasing sound, the sound of a woman, the sound of a man, etc. Just simply see or hear neutrally. But these are still mere words. In practice, we have to look and see and break them apart. When they are broken, there is not more concocting, the senses are not able to reach each other anymore. Cleanliness, brightness, and peace. Our minds are already clean, bright and peaceful. Clean means not dirty, because there are no defilements. Bright means there is wisdom, seeing our minds, or life. Peaceful means having stopped, there is no longer anything further to add. Summary. At this point, I'll summarize the principles of practice. First, the first stage is to catch the movements of the body in all the postures. When we can catch them, we will know the convention that we can see with our eyes and touch with our hands. This is objective, external. Second, having practiced the first stage, a little bit of knowledge arises, it is called defilements due to Vipassana. It is important to avoid this, not being too glad with the knowing, and continuing to watch the mind. When we see, know, and understand our minds penetratingly, greed, hatred and delusion will be destroyed to some extent. Third, when greed, hatred, and delusion have gone down a bit, we'll feel joyfulness. When joy arises, fix on it, but don't be caught up in joy. We have to pull ourselves out of it. Keep watching the mind. At this stage, wisdom knowledge will appear that destroys or diminishes clinging and grasping. Fourth, when attachment has decreased, one will see, know, and understand normality. The body is normal, speech is normal, and the mind is normal. This normality is called virtue concentration wisdom. Fifth, when seeing the state of arising passing, if one doesn't understand it, one will hold an abnormal view, but if one is fully aware, practice reaches its end. Therefore, I encourage you to try to practice until you meet with your own thoughts and are able to pull yourself out of them. Stages of practice. Determine to listen well, all lay people and monastic friends. When you determine to pay attention, you'll be able to remember. It is called knowing through memory and comprehension. From that, we study or practice to realize and truly know, or we have knowledge coming from our own vision and experience. Most people don't yet know and understand from studying and practicing, they only know how to make merit, to be generous, to keep precepts and to do tranquility meditation. But when it comes to more profound matters, that is to say, how to develop insight meditation, there are really very few people who know and understand it. With Vipassana it is usually a specific case, a specific individual, who knows and teaches it. Because of this, people are lazy and don't want to practice. As far as practice goes, they only know tranquility meditation, which they think is the same as doing Vipassana. This is because they still don't realize and really know. Their knowledge comes only through memory and comprehension. So, we make ourselves peaceful, but we don't understand clearly that there are two kinds of peace, namely peace under the influence of delusion, and peace due to awareness and wisdom.
May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease.